Hi, this is Mark from AltCoin Buzz, and today we're going to take a look at Bitcoin as we get started on a new week. We're also going to look at some things we don't normally look at, including the traditional markets and how those play with or against Bitcoin. We'll take a look at a couple of things that are not happening with Bitcoin. And finally, we'll look at where and how low can Bitcoin get to. So stick around. We'll do this very quickly, but let's get started. So let's start off with the major indexes. One of the things that people have said is, hey, as the stock market goes down, that's a good thing for Bitcoin because that money is going to flow into Bitcoin as a safe haven. And everybody's been looking for that correlation. Well, there is a strong correlation in my mind, at least at this point in time, and that is that as the stock market drops across the world, as goes Bitcoin. We are just not seeing that correlation between the major stock markets and indexes with a drop there moving over into the Bitcoin as a safe haven. And you can see that most of them are in a very strong sell or sell bias. So theoretically, if there was that correlation, we would see some more money flowing into Bitcoin rather than leaving Bitcoin. Okay, let's take a look at a couple other things that don't seem to be happening with Bitcoin. There are some people out there talking about this long-term trend line that we had going back since 2015 and that we basically did follow for quite a while until we went into that parabolic move up. And many were saying this long-term trend line is where we're going to come back to, and we'll zoom in on that circle in just a minute. You can see that we broke through that. Another thing that some folks were talking about was, well, maybe we're just trading in this kind of a channel right now. And if that was the case, it looks like we've also broken through that. We'll come back to the daily chart, but let's take a look at the weekly chart. Now, if you look at that descending triangle that we had going on, that we broke through, that's what everybody was watching for quite some time, especially when we had that sideways trading happening. If you look at that descending triangle and start using that as targets, because you remember to get your targets from a descending triangle, you use this price movement down to the baseline to where your support was, and then use that same line to the bottom to give you your targets. We can do that incrementally along this triangle. So if we take this range that we had back here, the high during that triangle, and bring it down, you can see that we've already gone through that first target, and we actually hit it with almost a tick to the tick on that week. The second target then goes from the second peak and then measure that down. We've broken through that. Let's just look at our next potential price move, and that's going to be in this peak, and that would take us down into this range where you can see we had some action happening back in July of last year, and we'll take a look and see what that does for us on the daily chart. But right now you can just see as a rough estimate that would take us somewhere in the $2,700 range. Now we're sitting on the 1 day, and if we just take a look at our moving averages at this point in time, we've got the 7-day moving average in the white that's been acting as resistance for us the whole way down. And we had some comments in the last video about, oh, look at how basic the TA is on Bitcoin right now. They're using moving averages and they don't know what they're talking about. Well, you know what? We'll look at the indicators, and all the indicators are blown out. You can't have this kind of price action and rely on the indicators. It just doesn't help you. At some point, the indicators need to reset. Our RSI, when we look at the RSI on the daily, the RSI is sitting around a 4.55. It hasn't been that low forever on Bitcoin. It doesn't tell us anything. It tells us that we're oversold. We already knew that. It doesn't mean that it can't move lower. So indicators at this point in time aren't telling us a whole lot. We need to look at some of the basics, the moving averages, the volume, the price action. Those are going to be the things that are telling. And right now, one of the things that is telling for us is that the 7-day moving average is acting as resistance. Let's turn on the VPVR, because the VPVR, that volume by price. So we can see these big bars that don't tell us a whole lot other than the volume during that time period, right? Those spikes, how much volume we're getting, but it doesn't really break up where that price action has been. But the VPVR does, and it's been very good to us to find these big gaps. And where we've broken through some of that support, we've quickly fallen between these big gaps into a new support area. And you can see that we're in another one of those right now, where the next area of support is back down in here at the $2,800 range, $3,000 range. And really, these boxes are kind of your big chunks that you have going on right now as far as the volume by price goes. So right now, your price is sitting right around $3,700. Theoretically, you've got some support. If we look at back in the September area of 2017, you've got some support right in here at about $3,600 down to about $3,400. So you've got some support in that area. Once, but not a lot. If we look at this volume by price, you've got this one bar right in here that's holding you up in that support area. But again, we didn't sit there very long. So there wasn't a whole lot of price action in that range just because we didn't hold there for very long. That was a period of about a week. Irregardless, you don't have a lot of support below that until you get down to the $2,800 range. So you've got that big gap in there. And it'd be a quick drop down into that $2,800, $2,900 area. So not going to take a whole lot to break through the support of 34, dropping us down to the area of about 29. From there, you've got some decent price volume. That should hold up for a little bit. In that $2,800 to $2,200 range, you've got some decent price volume happening. But if you break through that $2,100 to $2,200, you don't have a whole lot until you get down into about the $1,200 range. So we really need this 3450 to 3350 area, call it, to hold up. The problem is it's so fragile. It's so fragile. That's going to be very weak support for us. What I think is more realistic is for us to break through that at some point in time here in the near future and end up somewhere in the $3,000, $2,900 range as support, and see us trading in that area for much longer than even what we did up in here in this $4,000 range. Now, if we go into the 4-hour time period, and this is why the indicators aren't working for us right now. We actually did have bullish divergence looking like it was going on in the stochastic and in the RSI. We broke through that. Now, a large amount of longs had been liquidated on OKEX exchange. Okay, so that's happened on each one of these falls. So that's where a lot of this is being precipitated from, in my opinion, because I'm seeing those long liquidations closing very quickly within these big drops. And then I think some retail traders are jumping on top of that at the same time. And as a matter of fact, some of these bounces are probably only coming from retailer traders that are buying the dips. Now, Monday could open up and people look at this as a buying opportunity. We get a nice little reaction rebound, a little positive inflection to the chart tomorrow. That could happen, no doubt. So we need to continue to watch what's happening here on the daily chart and very clearly watch what's going to happen with this $3,400 price point and whether or not we break through that, because it's going to be a quick fall from there. We've got increasing volume with decreasing price. That's not a good sign on Bitcoin. This is not a strong chart for us for the bulls. We'll have to see if we can get any kind of positive rebound on the chart. Tomorrow will be a big day because, again, Mondays typically end up giving us a very big indication of what the rest of the week's going to look like. So where do you look if we get a big jump in Bitcoin tomorrow? I'll tell you in just a second. But before I do, make sure you visit AltCoin Buzz.io because all kinds of articles are coming out throughout the day from some very talented writers. Also hit subscribe and like on this video if you would, and hit that alert button so that you know when these videos pop up. So if we do get a positive reaction tomorrow on Bitcoin, the next area that we're going to be looking at is this resistance area that we floated against for the weekend, basically at $4,200. That is going to be our new resistance area at this point in time now that we've clearly broken through. $4,200 to $3,900 is the range that you're going to be looking at to see if Bitcoin can break through. Certainly you want to break through that $4,200 price point. That would be a positive. If we could clearly break through that, use that as support, but it's also going to be resistance for us. That was the area that we traded in over the week last week. And remember, the support area that we're sitting at right now is extremely fragile. So it wouldn't take much tomorrow to break us through that and get down to that $2,800 range. If Monday opens and it continues to the downside, it's not going to take much to break us down into that $2,800. If we get the break to the upside, be looking for that resistance that we just talked about and see if we can't break through that and start using it as support. If we can't, then another retest of the support area is even weaker, and that sub $3,000 then becomes very much a possibility. So that'll wrap it up for today. Until next time, may all your trades be good ones.